Hi there, in this video we are going to solve for a variable. We have 4 different equations we are going to look at. 2 with 1 variable. Remember, a variable is another word for letter, but using our math vocabulary we use the word variable. And then the other 2 examples we will look at are examples with 2 variables in it. So let's go ahead and get started with the 1 variable. So what I always want to do is solve for that variable. So at the end, I want to be able to see x equals. So the first thing that I'm always going to do is get numbers on one side and variables on the other. So I like to draw a line down my equal sign so that I keep nice and organized. So since 16 is alone already, I'm going to go ahead and bump the 4 over to the 16. Now remember, I want the 4 to move over, so that means I want to get this 4 to 0. And to get 4 to 0, I subtract 4. Whatever I do on one side, I need to do on the other. And then I get 12. So now I want to rewrite my equation so I stay nice and organized. I bring that 3x down, and then I bring my 12 down. Now again, I want to do the opposite to get the x and the 3 separated. Right now they are attached by multiplication. I know that because anytime a variable is right next to a number, that tells me multiplication. So I'm going to divide. Now again, whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. So that's how I would get my x that equals 4, because I did 12 divided by 3. Now let's go ahead to this example. This is another one with 1 variable. Drawing my line again to help me stay organized. Now remember, I want variables on one side and just plain old numbers on the other. So since this has a variable, I'm going to just leave it on this side. The reason why I'm moving the 5 and not the 11 is because the 11 is already by itself. So it would be one less step if I just moved the 5. Now remember, I want my 5 to get to 0. And this subtraction symbol is still technically a -5 because I can rewrite it as plus -5. Now I want a -5, I want to get it to 0. So I'm going to add 5. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. 11 plus 5 gives me 16. Now again, I rewrite my equation that I'm working with to help myself stay nice and organized. Can't forget about that 2x equals 16. Remember that I divide to get the 2 and the x separated. So then I have x equals 8. Now let's look at some examples that have 2 variables in it. Now we're going to use the same exact steps as we did earlier. First, I draw my line to help me stay nice and organized. Second, I need just my plain old numbers on one side and my numbers with variables on the other. Now remember, if I already have one thing over by itself, I'm going to move its like term over to it, because that reduces some of our steps. So since 12x is already by itself, I'm going to move 2x over. Same thing, I want to get 2x to 0, or you can think about it as doing the opposite. So to get to 2x to 0, I subtract 2x. That cancels each other out. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. 12 minus 2 gives me 10. Can't forget about that x. Now I bring everything down to rewrite my equation to stay nice and organized. This is where I see most people get mixed up, is that they forget to rewrite their equation so that it's nice and organized. When you don't do that, then you don't know what numbers to use, and it just, it gets all confusing. So we always want to rewrite your equation so it's nice and organized and you know what you're working with. So to get the 10 and the x separated, I divide. 20 divided by 10 is 2. Which gives me 2x. Let's go over to the other side. Ooh, this one has 2 variables and two plain numbers. Same steps, but first let me draw my line to stay nice and organized. Now I can't use my easy trick of I've got one thing by itself, so I move it. So what I like to do is I like to move the smallest numbers. Now you can move whatever you want first. I just like to move the x's so that I'm working with positive x's if I can. So I'm going to move my 3x, remember I want them to cancel out, over to my 5x. Now this is where it gets really important that you stay nice and organized. Now since I'm moving my x's over here, this is now the x's spot, so I need to move my 6 over, my -6 over, because I want just my variables, my x's, on this side. So then that means my numbers have to go on the other side. So I do the opposite again. Whatever I do on this side, I have to do on this side. Now, this is where it's super important that you bring down what you still have. I have nothing here because they canceled out. I have a 16. Get that equal sign still. Now I see I have a 2x, and then I see a 0, so I have nothing else. Now, to separate the 2 and the x, I divide again. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Just a quick reminder and a visual of the steps. We drew our line down the equal sign to stay nice and organized. Then we got the variables on one side and the plain numbers on the other. And then we solved for x. Just don't forget to stay nice and organized. See you in the next video.